Hello everyone. Today we will have Professor Rod Brennan, who have given us the second lecture. Today he will talk about two topics. The first one is energy management. He will talk about how to keep your energy at a high level. Second, he will talk about the internal control system. Okay, let's welcome Professor Rod Brennan.
First, I wanted to just quickly review this idea of emotional intelligence. There's also another article in there from the Harvard Business Review on the idea of work-life balance. I encourage you to read that. It's a really interesting article about having clear purpose. I mentioned you are the generation that has a better work-life balance probably than our generation did, and that's an important part of your success in life, because if you end up going through a divorce or something in your career, you're going to find out that that's a big distraction from doing your work and the more important things in life. So emotional intelligence, and the reason we bring this up, this was a study in the Harvard Business Review by Daniel Goleman. He wrote the book about emotional intelligence. I know you had some things on this. I just want to quickly review the ideas here. And I think, again, this is really important because it's as important as anything that you're going to do, and it's the way your technical skills are critical. But if you don't have these kind of things, self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills, you're going nowhere, whether it's in the firms or in a large company. So just want to kind of go over these again. This idea of self-awareness, that's the idea, and I'm going to spend most of the time in the energy management, but I'd like you to read the article. That's just the idea that you're aware of your strengths and weaknesses. You're cognizant of what you're good at and what you're not good at. And all of us, there aren't any people in here, in E&Y, in Siemens, or in the federal government that are good at everything, okay? And so it's recognizing and being candid and honest about where your weaknesses are as a way to improve. And so self-awareness is this idea that I understand my strengths and weaknesses, and I play to my strengths, and I work on improving my weaknesses, and I'm honest about them, and I surround myself with people who have strengths that are my weaknesses, etc. Okay? That even works in a relationship. You don't marry someone who is just like you and has all your strengths. You're really looking for, even though the dating game would have you think that you're looking for someone just like you, that's really not what you're looking for. You can find that out when you meet people. Self-regulation is the ability to recognize where you have impulses, passions, or strengths or weaknesses, when to act on them and when not to. When not to say that comment that might be right in a meeting, but it's going to set the meeting off in the wrong direction, not accomplish the goal, maybe push someone's button that isn't going to help get to the goal and the button. It's recognizing that you have a passion about something and you got to temper that passion. Those kind of things. Okay. Then motivation, and this is this idea of having a passion or motivation for your work that's something beyond just money. I told you when I started my career, I went through a magazine that said, "Oh, accountants make good money. I'm going to go do that." I didn't really have a purpose beyond that. And since then, in jobs I've had, I always have kind of a second bottom line. Nothing will turn you on more than watching people develop. You can work. I worked for. And when I was in Armstrong, I shared this. I worked for a lady named Helen Davis, who was an ex-school teacher who had an incredible ability to read people. She taught us employee involvement. We turned factories around using employee involvement. And I saw people that I would have fired and wrote off become the most productive people I'd ever met. And the only thing that changed was the way we treated them. And so that kind of, and whether it's your faith, whether it's environmental, whether whatever your passion is. Have something beyond just, I want to make a lot of money, because at the end of the day, making a lot of money doesn't make you happy, right? Should you've done that now that you're making millions, right?
My bank is making millions.
I have a little stake in the ground. I used to ride my bicycle to the University of Maryland with an Army backpack, and went to hang out at the health food store. I made $2,500 a year in a student job, and I was happy as a lark. And now I have multiple houses and cars and all that, and I'm no happier. Those things are just keep you busy. So some motivation beyond yourself. Empathy, that's being able to understand and put yourself in the shoes of someone else and being able to adjust in that meeting for that person that is got a real problem with something or passionate about something and how to work around it, how to feel what they feel, okay? And then the last one was the social skills, and that again is this idea that if you can't present, sell an idea, I don't care if you're the most brilliant accountant, most brilliant auditor out there, you're going to be challenged in your job to move ahead. Okay? I had a guy when I started at Armstrong. I was in a training facility working in corporate accounting. He was my roommate. He was a 4.0 student from Wharton. He was a brilliant guy. He was building a model ship in our dorm room with detailed model ship. I'm like, this guy's freaking brilliant. I come home one day and he's packing his bags. He's leaving. I said, where are you going? He goes, I just got to let go. I said, why? He goes, well, they said I wasn't able to relate well and communicate effectively with people. And, I'm thinking, they're getting rid of this guy? This guy's freaking brilliant. But he wasn't able to, present ideas and that kind of thing. And that's why, as I challenged you last time, every chance you get to present, go for it. Even if you get nervous, if you don't like to present, because you get good at it by practicing. That's why in this class we're doing presentations and that kind of thing. Okay? So just real important, the article's there, I encourage you to read it. Any questions about it? Anything? No? Make sense? Okay? Make that a priority. Okay, I mentioned to you that I've been to lots of charm schools, and the best training I ever got was going to the Human Performance Institute in Orlando, Florida. And this is a place I mentioned last time where they train professional tennis players, football players. It's $4,500 for 2.5 days of training. You spend a lot of the time in the gym. They run complete blood analysis and body work. And it's the idea that with athletes, what they do is they teach them, they take them from number 200 on the tennis circuit to number 1, and they don't teach them anything about tennis. They teach them how to engage intensely and then disengage. And that is the way the workplace is. It is not a marathon, it's how effectively you can engage intensely and recover. So if I'm playing Shiva in a tennis game and I'm trying to be on for 2.5 hours, I'm going to lose. And that's my personality, because I'm a type A personality person, so I try and put all my energy into something continuously. And I wish I could go back and do it over again, whether it's in my personal life, in my professional life, or in my community, or whatever. I could have done a lot better. So I'm going to take you through this, but and just to give you some actual statistics, that looks like an MBA student in the Rutgers program here. I don't know why this one isn't coming up here. Gee, if you know what I need to do here. So I hope you guys don't feel like this. Couple of statistics here. Disengaged, this is from an actual study, a third-party study that was done. Disengaged workforces decreased operating income 33% and earnings per share by 11%. Disengaged employees cost U.S. business $300 billion a year, and absenteeism, lower productivity, just forget it. Employees believe the payoff for a corporate engagement is improved performance, increased job satisfaction, improved balanced work life, and provide better overall health. And by the way, when we went to this training, yeah, question?
So in that statistics, how do you exactly determine, how much stress, it says there's a footnote that says stress in the workplace, how much do you actually determine, how much money is lost through stress?
Yeah. Well, what they did is they actually surveyed executives and asked them in an anonymous thing, how engaged are you? They're doing engagement, and then they looked at the financial impact of that. Granted, it's challenging to do, but this was their opinion. They felt that that they were not engaged in their work, and disengagement is a real issue in a lot of companies, and probably in most companies. Good question. Any other question? Okay. And challenge me too. I'd like to know if you disagree with this, because and full disclosure, I'm still learning to do some of this stuff. My challenge is in the area of eating, because I still go home in the evening, and I'm going to teach about eating strategically. I unwind by grazing. I'm not hungry. I'm just eating. At 9:30 at night eating. Yeah.
So did they integrate this with the balanced work-life or is it something?
No, it's a different approach, but and actually the Human Performance Institute is owned by a local company here now called Johnson & Johnson, and we are actually looking at it in our environmental health and safety and implementing it. reason I got to go to this thing is because the senior management, the former senior management of Siemens, Klaus Kleinfeld, is now the CEO of Alcoa. He went to this, and he used to run the New York Marathons and all this kind of stuff. And he was so impressed that he took the whole board of Siemens and sent them to this. The board then got caught up in the scandal. I don't think there's any relationship there that happened with us, and so. But you know, so one of the board members and my manager and said it was outstanding training, so I got a chance to go to it, but not directly related now. Okay, good. Yeah, just jump in with questions. I'm going to go a little fast here. All right, 65% of employees are disengaged and don't give their best effort, and 21% of employees are, you know, actually toxic, or, you know, and this was based on an anonymous survey that was actually done. Okay, so increased work demands, and I describe full engagement as the acquired ability to invest your full energy right here and right now, for when it's needed, and then to know when to disengage from something. Okay, so let's do a quick quiz. All right, I want you to look at these 5 questions, and I want you to answer them honestly. Okay, skillful, true, just a true and false question. Just write 1 to 5 on a piece of paper and just mark this down. This won't count against your grade. Skillfully investing time in things and people you care about spawns harmony and fulfillment. True or false? True or false? True. Good. Human spirit is fueled from a different energy source than the physical body. True or false? False. False. Okay. The best way to think about one's business career is as a marathoner, not a sprinter. True. Okay. Protecting yourself and others from high stress is an important part of your leadership. True. True? Okay. You guys got 1 out of 4 right, so that was pretty good. Okay. Why? Skillfully investing time in things and people who care about spawns harmony and fulfillment. That's wrong, because, or it's not totally wrong. You know, investing time is important, but managing energy, not just time, is the key to extraordinary results. Because you only have a limited amount of time. We all get 24 hours in a day. But energy is something that you can manage to take care of people. Our most critical resource is energy, not time. Okay, so that's the first one. And when we talk about energy, we're talking about it on 4 dimensions. Okay. Physical, which you know, if I'm going to run a marathon, I need energy to run. Emotional, that's the ability, you know how you get worked up about something? You know what your body does when that happens? It releases cortisol into your system. Okay, so that's the energy booster that allows you to lift a car off a little child or something. Okay, but if you keep under stress and you're releasing emotional cortisol into your system, it's damaging your system. Mental, that ability I told you about the tennis player that's able to do that volley and then he disengages for 30 seconds until the next serve. He mentally pulls back and he starts going, how did I do that? Why did I screw that shot up? It's going to affect his game. And then they call it spiritual. It's really not a religious thing. It's more this idea of you have a mission in life. You have something you want to accomplish. You're in this MBA program because you guys want to accomplish something. And are your actions consistent with your mission? And are you going to, at all costs, finish your mission? Okay? And I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. Okay? All right, so that's where it is. Okay, so here's your life, you guys. What happens as you guys are all still, some of you are still climbing up here into your prime here in terms of your capacity. At about 30, your capacity starts to wane. Okay, so for women, 27. For men, 25. The women mature faster than men, as you've noticed, right? But all of us about 30, then your capacity starts going down, but the demands go up. So some of you are married and have children in here. A lot of you are still single. What's going to happen in the years ahead? You're going to go over the 30, right? And you're going to have children maybe, you're going to have a career with increasing responsibility, you're going to have a mortgage, you're going to have college expenses. So your demand on your time and energy is only going to get higher. So if you don't do something to bridge that gap between capacity and demand, that's where stress is. Because it's real stressful if you're 55 years old and you don't have the energy to run with your grandkids or to deal with a demanding job that has you traveling 70% of the time. Okay? So that's why we got to do something because age begets us all. None of us are going to escape that. Right? So the human spirit is fueled from a different energy source than the physical body. No, that's not true. The human spirit needs the same energy source as the emotional energy takes the same energy it takes to run a marathon. Have you ever been in a meeting or been in a situation where you're really stressed and you're trying to have a discussion, or you're really exhausted and you're trying to have a discussion with your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend about something and you get irritable? That's because it takes energy to have an intimate discussion with somebody. It takes energy to do what I'm doing, to present up here. It takes energy to be a student in the MBA program. Okay? And the thing that we're going to show here in this is that keep teaching in this is the mind and the body and all of that, in order to build energy, needs challenge. Okay? I hate playing games. My wife and my family, they play games for hours. I hate playing games, board games and card games and all that. They'll play for 8 hours. I'm starting to play some games because I know it's going to help my mental ability. But the secret to building energy is simply this. If I take my arm and I lift weights, it's going to break down a muscle and then it's going to build it up again when I rest, when I recover. Right? And the same is with your mind. They found that, for example, shift workers, the idea is too, if I put a cast on my arm, what's going to happen to my arm? I'm going to avoid all stress on my arm, all discomfort on my arm. What's going to happen to my arm? It's going to atrophy, right? It's going to get weaker, and that's what happens to us if we're not no pain, no gain, but no challenge, no growth, no gain. Okay? Alzheimer's, for example, one of the treatments for Alzheimer's or prevention is to challenge your mind, continually challenge your mind. My wife, I mentioned, is from the older Amish, and they take care of their elderly, not in nursing homes, but they involve them in the family, and they have responsibility into their 90s. And their incidence of dementia and Alzheimer's is much lower than, and it's not because they're more healthy or anything, they eat all the junk weed. It's because they're engaged. Their minds are engaged. Okay? Is this making sense so far? So until we push beyond normal limits, we don't grow. Best way to think about one's business career is a marathoner, not a sprinter. Okay? No, that's not true. Life is a series of sprints. Life is engaging intensely and then recovering. That's how those tennis players go from number 200 to number 1. They learn to manage the energy because we only have a finite amount of it, and it's going to decrease, as we showed in that slide, over time. Okay? Okay, so play tennis, conduct your business, do it all with the idea that I'm going to engage intensely and then I'm going to disengage. So when I am doing this, when I'm presenting something, I need my energy, I need to stay engaged. But as soon as I stop, I'm going to disengage. I'm going to allow my body to recover. If you're taking a test, you put everything into taking that test, and then you recover before the next class. Okay? And they tell you if you sit at a desk, okay, for more than 40 minutes, it actually impacts your cognitive ability because you reduce the circulation going to your brain, and your ability to do things and your energy level is going to drop off significantly. So get up, take a walk, go walk to see someone instead of sending an email. Do something to move. Okay. Okay. So this idea, you must recover every 90 to 100 minutes, and they did a study that shows that people that are shift workers, that rotate shifts in jobs, that their life expectancy is much reduced, below average. Because they don't get to recover because they're rotating through shifts. Yeah.
How long is a recovery period? Because that just says you should recover every 90 to 100 minutes. But how long should you be recovering?
It can be, and the idea I gave to the tennis player, it can be just for a minute or two, just so you get your body is able to recover. Now, depending on how long you went, it might be longer, but you need a time to recover. Like when I exercise now, I do anything from stand-up paddleboarding to riding boring, exercise bike in the gym to, but what I do is I go 1 minute as hard as I can go, so I can't have a conversation with you. And you can do anything for 1 minute. And then I recover 3 times that amount. So if I do 2 minutes, then I recover 3 times that amount. And I really recover. I don't go on a treadmill from all out to a brisk jog. I let myself recover. And I spent 30 years of my life as a fanatic about exercising and running and doing all this stuff. And you know what I did? I advanced the aging process, as evidenced by my gray hair, and I wore my joints out, as evidenced by the surgery I had on both of my knees. Because, have you ever seen a lion that jogs for 45 minutes, or anyone in nature? This sort of hunter-gatherer concept where we were made to do incredible sprints while we're chasing a rabbit or something, with a spear, and then we recover. We were not made to go on an exercise bike and go for 90 minutes all out. You're just advancing the aging process and wearing your body out. Yeah.
Well, that's funny because the next, like the new biggest workouts are all high intensity, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because
Insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more natural to us.
Yeah. So the idea is, but the other one is the lady sitting on the exercise bike with a cup of coffee and the Vogue magazine and just pedaling. That ain't doing anything in it either, except it's burning some calories. But unless you get yourself at some point in everything in life to some level of discomfort and then recover, you're not increasing your energy level. We're talking here about managing energy, not time, not stress, and not really exercise or losing weight or physique or any of that. We're just talking about energy because it's the energy you need to engage with your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, etc., to run a marathon, to solve a problem at work, to do automated analytics, is the same energy, and you only have so much of it. So you got to use it right, and you got to use it as a sprinter. You got to engage intensely and then disengage. Yeah.
When you do the stress and recovery, is that in equal intervals?
Is that what?
Is that in equal intervals, or do you more or less day by year to figure out how much?
Yeah, it depends. I'm a little older than you guys, and so 1 minute is plenty for me. But the other thing, it's a little psychological. I can do anything for 1 minute. I can go all out for 1 minute or something. And they've actually shown now, and this is what they taught us how to train. They took us in the gym, and there were NFL football players in there, and they taught us how to train this way. And the recovery includes, because you're going all out, whether it's for 1 minute, for 20 minutes, or 30 minutes stretch, and then recovering 3 times that amount, they taught us to take the next day off. Don't, because you've got to break down. Your body's got to rebuild. Your body's got to recover. So it can be, you might be comfortable going for 3 minutes all out and then recovering for 9 or something. And I'm going to show you that eating is the same thing. It's a strategic way to eat. Does this make sense? I mean, and some of this is new physiological research too.
But isn't there individual variability as well?
Oh, sure. And you got to find what's right for you. I'm not saying go do 1 minute and then 3 minute recovery. That's what I do. But I'm the guy who used to run 5 miles every morning, and if your car was broke down, I would run right by you because I had to get my 5 miles in. And then when my knees got screwed up, I started riding bicycle 26 miles in the hills of Lancaster County for 10 years, round trip every day. And I love it. I mean, it's addictive. It's like endorphins, and you love it. And I'm motivated to exercise. I can get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and exercise, but it wasn't healthy because I was just wearing myself out. I was just doing too much. It was insanity. But notice that insanity thing's all about washboard abs, which I don't have, and that's more about vanity, which is another problem. Anyway, protecting yourself and others from high stress is an important part of your leadership. Well, the idea is not really, because we need some stress, we need some discomfort to grow. At my age, I'm just starting to value a little bit, it's hard, but to value adversity in life. Because it's through adversity that Abraham Lincoln became a great president. It's through adversity that you grow. It's in those times of adversity you grow. And you could start to recognize that in life, because all of us are either coming out of a crisis, going into a crisis, or in the middle of one. And that's life. That's how your life's going to be. That isn't just when you're a student. It's all through life. I don't care if you're a billionaire. You got issues because people are ripping you off or something. You got something to worry about. Okay. So this is just the idea. I won't go into this in a lot of detail, but you have a current capacity level. The only way to grow that energy is to take yourself beyond the limits a little bit, and not pain. You shouldn't be doing something that's painful, but you should be doing something that's uncomfortable. in all areas of life. I don't like to play games. I'm playing Scrabble with my wife and her friends because it's helping me, get my mental capacity. But if you don't stress a little, there's no growth, okay? But you don't want to do insanity. You don't want to overstress, okay? Okay, so that's the concept, right? And I'm going to make sure I give Chi this time for ACL. But this is as important as ACL because you guys need energy for this program, right? How's your energy level? Good? Okay, so eating. And you know what they did? Oh, by the way, they tested us in there on everything in this Human Performance Institute. They said 3/4 of the executives, these are senior executives from most companies, men and women, have serious health issues. Not they have some health issues. They did blood pressure, glucose levels, full blood work, that most executives have serious issues, okay, health issues. And you guys don't want to be there. Okay, so we're going to talk about eating strategically. And by the way, through all of this, it's the 80-20 rule, okay? 20% of the time, do whatever you want to do. Eat the Twinkies and the things you love. But 80% of the time, follow, okay? So, eat late, light, and often. You've heard that before, but that is a good guideline. And this is the area where I struggle because I do fine for breakfast and lunch, but at dinner, I just pig out. I mean, and I was raised that way, and it's so hard to change. I got my wife holding me accountable for it, but she does the same thing. So, okay, so controls cravings, decreases likelihood of overeating, maintains muscle mass, prevents excess storage. By the way, one of the things they taught us was your body is made with a survival instinct. So you go more than 3 hours without eating, and your body says, hey, Raquel has stopped eating, and she is in survival mode. So when Raquel says, I need energy to take this test in the MBA program here, her body says, okay, well, we're preserving the fat because Raquel hasn't eaten for three hours. So go burn muscle tissue or brain tissue, or burn more of that than you would. So you take a small snack of 75 calories to 100 calories, which is only half of one of those energy bars, and you eat one of those every 3 hours. Your body is not in survival mode, and it will burn fat rather than muscle tissue. So here you are working out at the gym, and you're building up this muscle, and then your body's burning the muscle because it thinks you're in survival mode. Okay. Sumo wrestlers, you know how they gain weight? You think they eat a lot? Well, they do, but you know how they do it? They skip breakfast and lunch. How many skip breakfast in here? They skip breakfast and lunch, and then they eat 10,000 calories for dinner, and then they go to bed. So if you want to look like Charlie here, just keep doing that. So what you want to do is you want to eat strategically. You want to not let your glycemic level, we'll talk about that, just your sugar level, go too low because you didn't eat, or go too high because you ate screaming yellow zonkers, the whole bag. Okay? You want to keep it in this thing here. And there's ways to do that because there's high and low glycemic foods, okay? And we'll talk about that in a second. But and so you want to do like kind of a portion thing. So Chi, hold up your hand like this, okay? My hands, I'm a little taller than Chi, and my hand's a little bigger than hers. And some of you guys that are real big would have bigger hand than me. And so what you want to do is you want to manage portions. And the way to do that is you want to get fruits and vegetables, protein-rich foods, and grains in a sort of 40-40-20. And you can vary this based on your. I actually started because I was having problems with my knees, not eating any grain for a while. I still do, but and my inflammation in my knees just cleared right up. Felt great. So you can vary that. But what you want to do is use this balance, and then for servings, you can use not the whole hand, but this part of your hand. So a serving of protein, piece of fish, is about the size of your hand here, okay? A serving of vegetables or fruits, again, about the size of your hand here, okay? Just as a guideline, because it tends to work with your body, But, you can vary that. And strategic snacks, eat low glycemic foods mixed with medium glycemic foods, okay? And bridge glucose between meals with a snack, again, 100, depending on the size, if you do 150 calories. And again, if you read those little energy bars, a lot of them are 200 calories, okay? So you want to just, you know what I do? I carry a trail mix with me. I forgot it today, and I just have a little trail mix, and so once every 3 hours, I make sure I at least take a few nuts, and I love nuts. I could eat them all day. So here's a glycemic index thing. I won't go into this. It's in the slides. But so if you're going to eat things like rice that's high glycemic, eat something else with it that's lower glycemic. So protein type things are lower glycemic, you know, and these are moderate ones, and then these are the things that are high glycemic. It's not saying you can't eat these things or drink these things, but if you do, you should do something to help balance it out so you're not spiking up your energy level. Okay? Because the old saying is, you know, the higher you go up, it's going to let you down higher. So, you know, just maintain that cycle where you don't let it drop down because you eat something within 3 hours, okay? And again, we're talking here about managing energy. So this is where your energy level. You don't want your energy level to go way up and then be the sumo wrestler that goes to bed after you ate all that pasta, and then you're just putting weight on, you know, that you're probably not going to be happy about. Okay, so how do you know when to stop eating? Okay, I love this. You know, you don't want to get to where you're in, you know, food coma. You know, that's where I'm at night. I'm in a food coma. I eat too much. Clothes feel tight. I mean, one thing that motivates me not to gain weight is I have a wardrobe, and I have a 32-inch waist that I've had since I was 16. And I am not going out and re-wardrobing just because I'm eating too much. You know, I mean, you know how clothes cost, especially you women. I don't, you know, I'm not going to go out and buy new clothes just because so I stop eating if I start getting too tight. But if you want to maintain your weight, feel full, not stuffed, bloated, okay? You want to lose weight, just that feeling of satisfied, not hungry. The other problem I have is I eat too fast. So by the time my body's saying, you know, I grew up in a family with 7 kids, and my dad would put, you know, the steak out on the table, and we'd be like, you know, and we learned to eat fast, so you got to eat, you know. So, but, you know, you want to, if you get that, you want to lose weight, just feel satisfied, not hungry anymore, and food lasts 2 to 3 hours. Some foods last a little longer, okay? All right, got it on the food, so it's this eat small amounts. Next one is exercise, and I talked about that. I love this picture here. You're at the fitness center, and they're all going up the escalator to get to the fitness center. Okay, so here, manage energy. We ought to talk about some of this. You want to, one thing, and exercise is not just exercise, it's around sleeping too. And you want to get 7 to 8 hours sleep. You know, the people who come to me and say, I don't need 3 hours of sleep a night, man. I'm just, you know, built that way. Alone. That's not good for you. And that's what they taught us at least. And you want to try and just go to sleep at the same time. Sleeping in on weekends isn't good for you because it throws off your energy and your body. And have a ritual. For me, it's reading. You know, I read in the evening until I feel tired, and then I go to bed. And sometimes if I'm not sleeping well, I get up and start reading until I feel sleepy, and then go to sleep. But have some kind of ritual, because sleep is a component of energy management. Okay. So take the stairs, not the elevator. I work on the 6th floor of the Siemens building. I walk up twice a day. With my briefcase, it's always harder in the morning. Never get used to 6 flights. 4 flights I can do. 6 flights is always a little stress, but I know it's good for me, you know. Walk to another apartment, don't email. Take a shower, not a bath. You burn 5 times as many calories standing up than you do sitting down, okay? So we got this new way of working now at work, and we have these desks that you press this here, and the desk comes up. I work half my day standing up when I'm in the office. And at home, I'll show you my desk at home here. I got one of these light desks, and so that's my office at home. There's a jacuzzi here on the right, and there's a view of the Atlantic Ocean right out the window. So I work from home as much as I can. But this life desk, this thing, I just turn a button, adjust it, adjust down. I can sit down and then stand up. Now you shouldn't stand up all the time because that's not good for you to stand in one place for too long. So you want to move around. You know, I have a little headset and I talk and just walk around when I talk. So 5 times as many calories for those of you that are counting. Okay. And you want to exercise safely. It's quality, not quantity. Planned use of movement. So, like I shared, you know, do something where you engage intensely and then you recover and exercise. And it can be anything. It can be lifting weights. Vary the muscles that you use. You can lift weights really hard for 30 seconds or a minute, and then just recover. Let yourself recover. You know, those are the people sitting on the bench like this, you know, for hours in the gym. I always wonder if they ever really are lifting anything. You know, work all your muscles, stretching. Okay, and this again, I won't go into this, but this is you don't want to be in zone P there because that's where you're tearing down your system, okay? You want to be in zone D there where you're discomfort. You know, if it's not a little uncomfortable, you're not growing, okay? You're not increasing that energy level. This is all about increasing energy levels, okay? We already covered a lot of this. And to tell what is a good, max out for you, whatever rep you can do at something in 8 to 12 reps. So you want to use a weight that you can only do 8 to 12 reps to give yourself some stress. If you can do 15 plus, it's too light, and you can't even get the thing off the ground for more than 7 or 8, it's probably too heavy. Okay, again, work all the muscles, okay? All right? So then we talk briefly here, and I'm hurrying up because I want to go through here, but about this idea of mental and emotional. So I engage intensely, then I recover, okay? And whether you're disciplining your children, whether you're dealing with your boyfriend, girlfriend, whether you're having an argument with your boss at work, spend the time to make sure that you're ready and you have the energy to engage and it's the right time. Don't make important decisions after 11 o'clock at night. Don't get in an argument with your spouse when you're both, going through a rough time. Just recognize that you got to recover and you need energy. And if you don't have energy, you might want to postpone that discussion. You just came in the door and you're tired and you're burned out. That's not the time to talk about why the checkbook isn't balancing. Okay, so now let's talk just briefly here about mission and vision, okay? Because this is really important. Okay, that we all have some kind of mission in life. Okay, I want to be the CEO of Siemens. I want to be the lead partner at EY. I want to be a great mom. I want to spend time with my kids. I want to contribute to society. I want to save the whales. I want to whatever it is that you want to do in life. Okay, and you should write that mission down. Someone said a mission or a vision is a compelling picture of a preferable future. And the things you write down, my wife and I do this every year. We use what's called a 4-term model. And we write down our vision 2 to 5 years out. Then we write down the ground where we are today and test the vision against that. And we write down our energy and motivation. Why are we going to achieve this vision? What's our motive? And then we put goals and we set those goals and we build a budget around doing that. But you should write down your mission so you're clear about what your mission is, okay? And at all costs, then, fulfill your mission, finish your mission. They told a story at this seminar, just real quick, I saw this on a video. There were 3 NFL football players, and they told them during the seminar, your mission, gentlemen, is to run 1 mile in 9 minutes, touch the white fence down here in Orlando, Florida, and then come back. Will you finish your mission at all costs? And these 3 NFL football players, and they have it on camera, said, yes, we will do that. 9 minutes isn't bad for an NFL football player, You guys could probably all do it. So they told them, okay, one thing you ought to know, this is Orlando, Florida, and there's lakes on either side of the path you're running down, and sometimes there's alligators bathing in the sun, so just be careful about them, or water moccasin snakes. Are you going to fulfill your mission? Yes, sir, we are. Okay. All right, ready, set, one other thing. Once in a while, there's wild boars down here, but they're very rare, so don't worry about that. Okay, go. So these guys start off, and they have this on camera, and they get about 3/4 of the way, and they hear this wild boar in the woods. And these guys stop like this, and they go, and then they hear it again, and they turn around and run back to the trainer. And they said, the trainer goes, did you guys finish your mission? No, man, the guy says, we saw a wild boar. He goes, you saw a wild boar? He said, yeah, we saw a wild boar. So they did it again now with first responders and Navy SEALs that came to this thing, and they trained there too. And they said the same thing, same story. And they said, go. And they went out, and they got about 3/4 of the way, and they heard this wild boar, and they stopped. And they moved slowly into the woods, and they saw up in a tree a trainer with a wild boar call. And they went down, touched the fence, and came back. So they finished their mission at all costs. And sometimes, the other lesson in that is sometimes you need to move toward the things that are challenging you. If you're hesitant to make a speech, then make some speeches. Go in the woods carefully and make some speeches and get better at the emotional intelligence skills. So here's the problem is that we have these goals, okay? But our mission is, our actions are inconsistent with our mission. Because I'm too, I want to spend time with my kids, I want to spend time with my family, I want to be a great producer at Siemens, I want to be a leader, I want to develop people, I have all these, I want to save the whales, I want to do whatever, okay? But I have no energy. Because do you exercise right? No, I'm too busy to exercise. Do you eat right? No, I don't have time to do that. Okay, so what we're really doing is our actions are inconsistent with our mission. Okay, so what they had us do in this training is they had us write down our mission so it was clear. I want to be a better spouse, father, mother, kids, worker, innovator in my field. And then write down my old story. My old story is I'm too busy to spend time with my wife, too tired to spend time with my kids, too burned out to take any other projects on at work. In order to be, I love this Ernest Hemingway, in order to be a great writer or a person must have a built-in shock-proof craft detector. Because that's a bunch of crap. You know, you could do that, but you're not doing it. And this is where you guys are, is where you develop those habits. So then they had us write out a new story that's committed. I'm committed to my mission, to completing my mission at all costs, and I'm going to do these things in order to assure that. You know, they ran all this stuff on us, and everyone had high blood pressure and all the, you know, because you're not going to spend time with your kids if you've got high blood pressure and no energy, right? How are you going to do that? How are you going to be a great performer at work if you, you know, have no energy? You know, I traveled 80% of the time for 7 years, and one thing I did everywhere I went, even if it meant just getting up at 5 in the morning and running on the Isar River in Munich, I exercised, and that helped me helped me tremendously in my job. Now at the time I hadn't attended this, so I was doing this sort of burnout exercise. So I'm going to work out 3 days a week. I'm going to do this. I'm going to reduce my cholesterol. I'm going to have a date night with my wife. I'm going to complete my project management training by this date. So these goals are all together. And you know, you may have a boss at work that doesn't support this, but I'll tell you, you know, if you don't, you know, again, this is a series of sprints. It's a long career. If you don't have the energy to do this, and if you put all your energy into work and have no energy for your personal life, you ain't going to be much use to Siemens, E&Y, or anyone else. So, you know, so manage your energy. Okay, I'm done. Any questions? Yeah. Put your name cards out too, for sure. Too. I don't have them all memorized yet. Yes, Caitlin.
So like one of the things you mentioned is to disengage mentally. Like for example, like say a tennis player would, after serving, whether it's a net or not, would disengage mentally. What's like a good way to disengage mentally? Do you just stop thinking about it? Or?
Yeah. I mean, what they described with, I think Sampras was one of them, some of the others, that they just learned to, you know, just put their mind on something they love doing, or someone they love, or something, you know, sort of a mantra. What's that word? Mantra they use in meditation. You know, meditation, whatever works for you, but get your mind off of how did I screw up that point, or he's coming after me with that racket, or you know, or whatever. You know, something that can just some place you like to be. You know, your mind's an amazing thing. It can take you anywhere. You know, you read a good novel and you're in New Jersey somewhere, but you're really in the Bahamas somewhere enjoying life, you know. So do something to take your mind off, and don't feel guilty about that, because you think, oh, I'm not focused on the game, or I'm not focused on my job because I'm taking a minute or two after that presentation to disengage. You got to do that. You know? Then your mind actually recovers. It rebuilds brain cells, you know, even in a very short time. Okay. Yes, Joyce.
Is it fair to say this is just another vision of having a balanced life?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. 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 But there's a lot of things out there that say to us, don't live a balanced life. You know, say to us, you gotta, you know, put in 100 hours at the workplace, you gotta do this, you gotta run, you gotta do insanity, you know, so there's a lot of messages sending a different message, you know, so absolutely, agreed. Anything else? Yes? Oh.
Can we go back to the last slide?
The last slide? Yeah.
Yeah, just this picture shows a lot of time. When often in your lecture, just curious about this. You see the left-hand side, we develop when we go up, and why would it become extraordinary when we go down? Just curious about this picture.
Well, I think what it's saying is, if we work all of those areas, we can become extraordinary. You know, if we develop and build in all of those areas, then we can become extraordinary in all the areas. I'm not sure why that's like that. That's one of their slides. So I added the little things on the side there, but I'm not sure. Do you have a thought about it?
Yeah, I just don't understand. This picture shows a lot of time to the lecture, a lot of slides. So
Yeah.
Wondering why.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that goes. I think it's just, that as you stress, you develop, and then you cover all those areas. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, anything else? Yes.
How do you apply this to classes? Because I know that lectures can be very long. So when you say engagement,
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I struggle with. That's a great question. In this class, I was telling him earlier in the lesson. I mean, who wants to listen to anybody? For one of the ladies said, Brad Pitt listened to for 4 hours. But who wants to listen to anybody for 4 hours? I mean, really, it's too much. And that's why what we want to do in this class is we want to try and bring in speakers and do different things so you can engage. And you should engage during the lecture and then make sure you disengage. I don't want to see anyone sleeping when I say, why are you sitting there? I'm disengaged. So yeah, you do it, again, just a minute or two is enough to recover. Okay, anything else? Okay, so we're going to start out again. I'm going to talk today about risks. First I want to show you my little video on how when you look at risks, you think you got everything together and internal controls, and you put everything in place, and then you have problems. And so this is, I don't know if the sound doesn't work here, you might not, but it's okay, I can describe it if it doesn't come up. So these are a couple of 3 guys. I wish if the sound comes up, if anyone's Korean, they can translate for me. This is an actual picture that was taken off a fishing boat, or a tourist boat. Yeah, so these guys are out in the sea, and they're all set, they got all their risks mitigated. All of a sudden, look at this. That's an actual picture. That's an orca. Lands right on top of the guy. And that's over. No. Look at this. Watch this. It comes back up again. Look at this. So he had a 20,000-pound whale land on him. He comes up. So that's interesting. But you think you're mitigating your risks, but there's always going to be risk, and that's part of the point of this today, is that we're always going to have risk no matter what we do. So today, I want to talk to you about the internal control system and enterprise risk management. And this is the whole control environment. It's not just, as I said earlier, financial, it's operational, strategic, compliance, and financial. Okay? So let's, so I'm going to cover the ERM I'm going to do in the next class, because we're going to actually be dealing with, we're going to be talking with IBM. We're going to have them talk about how they're using technology. And I'm going to read the technology here. So what is an internal control system? Anybody? What's an internal control system? No. What if I said to you? What is an internal? What does the internal control system include? Checks and balances. Okay. You guys agree? Checks and balances. All right. Okay.
You don't have too much power to one person. Make sure.
What? You agree with her? Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Yeah, it is. It's everything that monitors, that mitigates risks or leverages opportunities in business. And what is enterprise risk management? What is that about? The SEC, back 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, came out with the requirement that all company officers, management, are involved in looking at the risk management part of it, because that's why Enron failed and other people failed. But what is enterprise risk management? Anybody?
It's how you foresee potential risk and minimize the risk.
Right.
And make sure that the company is on the right track.
Yeah. It's looking at risks. Exactly. And there's one other component of it that's important, and it's also looking at opportunities. Because we don't just have risks, but we have opportunities. I just ran our risk management meeting, enterprise risk management meeting yesterday for North America, and we had all the senior executives there, and it was really interesting because the big issues we have today with risks are cyber terrorism, both on products and personal data. This is a huge risk in everyone's mind. We have issues with our business with Iran because there's all these sanctions. And we provide medical equipment to Iran that has radioactive things in it, you know, and we got to be so careful that we don't violate any of these sanctions because we're a listed company in the U.S., even if we're doing business all around the world. So that's a biggie for us. Conflict minerals is another one. Okay, big issue right now. Everyone's trying to get their hands around it. I was just with E&Y and ADP and Verizon and Conair at a meeting here in North Jersey, talking about, you know, conflict minerals and sustainability risks like water and storms. And, you know, Mayor Bloomberg, the sea levels are rising by a foot or more. And in New York, they're looking at spending $20 billion, Mayor Bloomberg, to mitigate problems with water. So huge issues. But then on the other side, we've got opportunities at Siemens. We're looking at, you know, what are fracking or natural unconventional gas. What's the opportunity there? There's $50 billion that's been released by the U.S. government for Sandy recovery. We have an addressable spend in that in some of our products, as do a lot of other companies. There's $1.2 trillion of infrastructure that has to be rebuilt in this country because we haven't taken care of our bridges and our tunnels and all that. That's an opportunity, and we got to be purposeful about that. Take Kodak, for example. Okay, Kodak was a great company. It's still, I don't even know if it's still here, but it still is a great company. They were a well-managed company, very organized company, very good at operational things. But they missed something. And they even were part of inventing it, and that's called digital film. You know, we went for digital film versus regular film. And they missed the boat on that. And they were so good at regular film, they missed the boat on the technology that was emerging. In 1968, the Swiss had 84% of the watch market in the world. And two young Swiss watchmakers came to the Swiss Watch Congress in Geneva, and they presented a new technology which is called the quartz watch that all of you use today. And it was totally rejected by the Swiss watchmakers because they said, you know, that's not a watch, that's a piece of electronic gadgetry. A watch has to have an armature and, you know, the old type of watches that you wound up and everything. And so they rejected it. Those two young Swiss watchmakers took that concept to the Texas Instruments and Seiko, and the rest is history. And today, the Swiss have less than 4% of the watch market, and 65,000 talented Swiss watchmakers lost their jobs because they didn't see the opportunity and didn't leverage the opportunity. When I worked for Armstrong that makes these ceilings, one year I got put in charge of developing contingency plans for Y2K. You know, we thought, this was in 2000, we thought Y2K was going to be, in 1999, was going to be the thing that would wipe everyone out from a software standpoint. And it ended up not really doing that, partly because people paid attention and mitigated, and partly because it was overblown a little bit. But we had a plan because they were expecting the Ukraine and Russia to have particular problems with you know, problems from code in Y2K, you know, date routines and all this other stuff not working. And so we had a contingency plan that if our competitors that we shipped ceilings and flooring and other interior furnishings into got in trouble, we were ready with supply chains and everything to go in and take that business away. We were purposeful about that. And that's part of what risk management is about. It's not just mitigating risk. It's not just looking at the glass as half full, or half empty, but looking at it half full and seizing opportunities. So, but we're going to get into the risk management in the next class. I want to talk about the internal control system. Okay. So that was a great answer, by the way. But it's both risks and opportunities. So, what sent Siemens on this journey to redo our internal control system? Well, a couple things. But the biggest thing was, as Jeff was just talking about, we were guilty of corruption. And that corruption resulted in us getting a Foreign Corrupt Practices violation, the largest fine that was ever given, $1.6 billion, and we spent probably another $2 billion remediating that. We got, those are settlements with the DOJ, the SEC, and German authorities. We got a monitor with a whole staff of people from a former German federal minister of finance for 4 years, and we had to pay every penny of that, so that was another expense. But we came out of that with a whole different look about corruption. And someone asked, you know, how common is corruption? Well, I'm telling you from that data I provided with the fraud stuff, it's going on all over the place, probably here at Rutgers as well. You know, corruption isn't remember, asset misappropriation is the biggest problem, that's follow the money. But corruption is one of the biggest ones and one of the biggest impacts. And as we talked earlier with Jeff, the regulators are coming down on that. So we got the fine for not having a sustainable internal control system. We actually didn't get the fine for the actual corruption because it's very hard to prove corruption because the money, you can't follow the money. You get to the Cayman Islands and the money stops there, or Switzerland or other places. So you know, we actually, you know, didn't really admit any wrongdoing. And I just saw today in an article where Marianne Joe, whatever her name is, new SEC chief, she's saying that we are now going to insist that companies admit wrongdoing. You know, because if you do something wrong and you pay $500 million, and the question begs, and you don't admit you did anything wrong, but you pay $500 million, the question begs, why did you pay the $500 million if you really didn't do anything wrong? You know, but and also the regulations are getting steeper. So this sent us on a journey to say we've got to do something about our internal control system, and we got to make it what I think today is probably world class. We probably have one of the best ones, and we benchmark that. And but we're not naive. We got to continue to improve, and that's what I want to share with you today, and what role automation does and can play in that. Peter Loscher, who's the CEO of Siemens worldwide, he's an Austrian. He actually worked for Merck here in the U.S. You know, he said compliance is the #1 priority. We will only do clean business. Now, other companies argue you can't survive in this environment in Nigeria and in China and in Brazil and other places if you don't participate in corruption. Our position is we don't care, we're not going to do it. And there's zero tolerance for it. So if someone in our company is bribing someone through an intermediary or otherwise, it is no-go, turn them in, and they'll be fired immediately or prosecuted. And we've had that happen since this happened, where people thought, well, maybe it's still that way. And some of it's a cultural change. In 1999, you could take a tax deduction for corruption, you know, and you could write it off your books as a business expense. Well, not anymore, and in Europe. So, you know, but it's still, unfortunately, a common practice in many countries. I believe, and I always have this debate, I love to have this debate with my Chinese students and colleagues, that, you know, I think it's getting a lot better in China because China's recognizing that if you want to compete in the world economy as a top performer, you're going to have to get rid of corruption, or you're going to have to deal with it, or you're going to have to, you know, change the way it's done or something. And I think they realize that because they have a booming economy that's growing by leaps and bounds, and there's proof that you have a 17% greater GDP in countries that don't allow corruption than those that don't on an equalized basis. So, you know. So let's look at this whole picture here. So we're expanding the view here. We're not just talking about financial control. So we have risks. Okay, we have a gross risk. That's the risk that we have. You all have risks in your lives here, and your risk appetites or your risk tolerances differ. Okay. So for example, how many here would jump out of an airplane tomorrow if I told you we had? Okay, how many? Oh, the other class is a lot braver.
What, skydive?
Yeah, skydive. Okay. Yeah. How about without a parachute? No. So you have a certain risk tolerance. Some of you will do that. Some of you won't. I happen to be. I'm mellowing as I age here, but I happen to be a risk taker. I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because I thought I'm going to do all these high-tech stocks and I'm going to invest in real estate, and I lost all kinds of money. My wife is very conservative. You know, I go out in the ocean surfing after hurricanes. You know, and I love it. I love the challenge. You know. My wife doesn't even swim in the water. We live on the beach, you know. So, oh, by the way, you're all invited on July 4th if you guys want to come down and have a cocktail or something, and it's not a condition of your grade or anything like that. Just don't have too many cocktails. No, but I'm at 508 Ocean Avenue in Bradley Beach. I'll write that down, or you can send me an email. You don't have to RSVP, and if the weather's nice, they do fireworks in front of our house, but you can come down and spend the day at the beach if you want. I'm going to set up a volleyball net if there's if there's enough people. I'm going to have a whole bunch of other company and friends over, but you're welcome to just stop in. You don't need to confirm or anything. It doesn't matter. And I'll have maybe some finger food and a cocktail for you or something. So okay, so you're welcome to come down if you want to. But no pressure there either way. But love to see you if you want, because you guys need a break. You work so hard, so you have this gross risk, right? And now we put in the internal control system, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And that internal control system mitigates those risks, okay? And you do it on a risk basis. We have controls around accounts payable, accounts receivable, etc. Okay? So we put in that internal control system, and that includes Sarbanes-Oxley, it includes compliance, it includes level of authority controls, it includes operational controls, it includes strategic controls. It's the things that you're going to test every day, okay? All right, but after you do that, you still have some risk. And let me point out, which we made the point in the last class, that most of these controls rely on what? On a 4 eyes principle. That means that, Nina, I can catch you doing something wrong. But, if you and Justin are working together, these controls are useless. And 42%, we saw in that data from the ACFE based on 2,000 actual cases, 42% of the of fraud is collusive. So the whole control environment isn't finding that. And most financial fraud is collusive. So, this is good and this is important, but back to our point about using automation, if you don't have automation and can't create a perception of monitoring, there's a lot of things you're not going to catch. Because if Ying and I decide to go in on something together, I can circumvent almost any control system in a company, a traditional control system in a company. Because if the accounts payable person and the CFO are working together, they can forge checks and they can approve them and everything's fine, right? But we put these in, and then we reduce this gross risk down to some level here. But then we still have what we call a net risk, okay? And those are the things that aren't budgeted, provisioned, in your operating plan, all right? And when we talk about enterprise risk management, we're talking about the things that are not already covered by the internal control system. So we have a thing in our company, when we talk about enterprise risk management, we're only dealing with things, once we provision something, once we build it into our operating plan, then as an example, we have a risk around the declining price erosion with medical equipment. We sell medical equipment. There's clear pressure now because of Obamacare and other things that what Medicare is going to reimburse for medical procedures and for medical equipment is going down. So we know that, we're anticipating that, we're building it in our plan now. So it's not an enterprise risk, it's controlled within the actual control system. So this is for those things that are that aren't provisioned, and those are things that are coming at us that we haven't really responded to, like the infrastructure opportunity, risks and opportunities. I'm always talking risk and opportunities. Okay, so you put in your enterprise risk management system and you manage those risks and opportunities. And we have a response plan. We have an owner for everyone. I'll show you that in our system. I'm going to actually take you on our tool here in a little bit. Okay, and then we have. That takes care of some of the risks. Can you mitigate all risks? No.
You don't know them all.
You don't know them all. Even the ones you know, you mitigate them all. There's a risk every time you get in your car and pull out here in the street, but you still do it, right? And you don't wear a crash helmet and padded suits and bulletproof glass, and there's risks, right? We assume. So what we do with the remaining risk is we either avoid it. We transfer it to someone else through insurance or something. We try and mitigate it just by being more alert, or we just accept it. We just say, there's some risk in jumping out of an airplane with a parachute on, but I'm willing to accept that risk. And in every business, we have to accept some risk. In fact, we're not going to grow. I'm going to cover this next time, but just as a concept is this idea of risk appetite or risk tolerance. All of us, as I said in here, have a different risk tolerance or appetite. And so does anybody sitting in a boardroom. But an organization should be clear about what their risk appetite is. How much risk are we willing to assume? So for example, if I'm Siemens and I say, we want to grow in the sustainability area or we want to grow our top line, and we're willing to take some risk, even if it causes problems with profit or safety or compliance or other priorities that we have. And we only, I'll get to this in a minute, but so the key is we are willing, we have a certain appetite, but we need to understand that appetite, because otherwise we're sitting in a room and you're going to say one thing about what you think the risk we take, and I say something else, and a bunch of people's personal opinion, when the organization has a certain risk appetite. So we're in a process right now, and I have an intern from Germany that's working with me on this and with our central group, and we're trying to define, and I'll show you how we do it and how some other companies do it next class. We're trying to define what is our risk appetite. Because once we understand that, then we can start to measure that and see if we're responding. Because maybe Kodak saw too much risk in getting into this digital stuff, or the Watch Congress felt it was too risky to get into this electronic stuff, and they didn't do it for that reason, and they missed the boat. So and again, we'll never mitigate all risks, okay? So that's the point there. So what does Siemens do? I'm going to talk today about the internal control system. In Sarbanes-Oxley Section 302, there's a requirement that you have an attestation from the CFO and the CEO of any company saying that our internal control system is in place and operating to the best of my knowledge effectively, okay? And so what we did is we said we're going to expand on that and have a 302 on steroids. We're going to come up with an in-control statement at the end of every year that doesn't just say under Sarbanes-Oxley, and remember Sarbanes-Oxley is financial reporting, okay? It's not operational and strategic. But we're going to look at all of Siemens' control environment, and we're going to have a statement that we give to our auditors, to E&Y, and to the public, and we say we are making a statement that all our controls are effective and are operating to the best of our knowledge effectively. Okay, so that's the end game that we get to this. Now, how do we get there, and what is the process? So what we do is we have every sector, division, and business unit go through and make the same attestation, and that rolls up from there and goes to Peter Loescher and Joe Kaiser, the CEO and CFO respectively of Siemens in Munich, and they have to sign this statement that summarizes the activities, highlights any deficiencies, and provides an overview and states the responsibility of individuals issuing the statement, basically that we do have a sustainable internal control system. And this is done at every company, 1,000 companies in Siemens every year. And the 302 is tied into it. The 302 is actually done every quarter. Okay? So, how do we organize around that? Again, this is all coming out of what we went through with this very dark period in our company. And we said we've got to have an integrated, sustainable. And don't get me wrong, Siemens was doing some great stuff, here in the U.S. and over in Germany and over in China, but it wasn't integrated, and everyone was doing it differently, and everyone had a different risk appetite about the approach. So this standardized approach is put in. And what it is we have, risk folks in all of the sectors and the divisions. We have people responsible for each of the regions and a central group. They report up through the central risk and internal control group, up to the managing board, to the audit committee, and to the supervisory board. In Germany and Europe, you have usually two boards. You have a managing board and a supervisory board, not one board in the company. And so this whole structure is set up so that we have risk officers and people. I have North America region. There's someone like me that has Africa, someone else that has China and Asian Rim, and someone else that has Europe. So we all have that responsibility, and we're responsible for the whole control environment and enterprise risk management in that region. Okay? And then I have an organization in the U.S. here, in North America, where we have each of our divisions, and we have a community, and we work together. And then we have our cross-sector businesses, which is Siemens Financial Services, our bank, basically. We have global shared services. We have a real estate division. We have a corporate technology division. We have Canada and Mexico and the Central American countries, Costa Rica, Uruguay, Panama, all the Central American countries. And so we manage that part locally, okay, from that same model. All right, now listen up, because this is where the other class got in trouble. Okay. We only have risks and opportunities relative to objectives. Okay. So if I'm not, if I have any risk or opportunity that isn't linked to an objective, I ought to ask myself, why am I doing it? And I'm going to show you in a minute the categories we put them in. So we have objectives, and we really don't have risks or opportunities unless they're linked in some way to the objective. So for example, if you said to me, well, wait a minute, everybody has to follow, if they're a listed company, financial reporting guidelines, US GAAP or IFRS, yeah, well, if you don't do that, you have a reputational goal in this case, let's say, okay? And every company, and you personally, should have those 5 to 10 at the most things that are your goals in life, And when I see a company that isn't clear about their goals, they can't articulate. When you go for a job interview, ask them, say, what are the goals of this company? And if they hand you, well, here's our strategy document, it's 400 pages, that company's got a problem. They should be able to articulate, these are our key focuses and key goals, something like this, okay? So, and you personally, I hope if I said to you, where are you going with your life, you would be able to articulate to me some key things that you want to accomplish in life, and it probably shouldn't be more than 5 or 10 things that you're focused on, because that's, when you get beyond that, it's unmanageable, is what you find out, okay? So, we only have risks and opportunities related to goals and objectives, okay? Remember that. These are the categories that we use. You'll see other companies in some variation. And by the way, this is based on the COSO model, okay? So, I'd like you to think about in this grouping, are there any things in here, or anything that is in here, or that's not in here, that you would do in a business? So, just to run you through them real quick, we have things in the strategy area like corporate governance, risk and internal control, that's what I do. Internal audit, that's what many of you do or will do. Corporate sustainability, strategy and planning, and some others. In operations, we have product lifecycle management, your key business operations, customer relationship management, project management, supply chain. Financial, you're all familiar with treasury, accounting and financial, controlling, tax, capital structures. Compliance is regulatory compliance, bribery, fraud, legal regulations, antitrust, etc. Then I go to the next one. The strategy also includes market dynamics, major initiatives, mergers, communications, stakeholders, preventive crisis management, quality management, real estate under operations, human resource, environmental health and safety, and IT. And then financial also has guarantees, pensions, insurance, and LOCs, letter of credits. So what we contend is that anything we do can at least fairly closely fit into these things. Okay, so you might say, well, what about if you do derivative accounting or something? Well, that falls in accounting and controlling. It's just, it may not be spelled out right there, but that's part of the controlling process or the accounting process, financial accounting, management accounting, okay? So the argument is that, and the reason we do this is we want to make sure that every risk that Siemens has or every control Siemens has can be categorized under one of these. And if we come up with something that isn't on here, let me just ask, can anyone think of anything you do in a business, any business? Google, Microsoft, Joe's Pizza Place, that isn't covered in here somewhere? Kind of a tough question because you kind of haven't studied it. But, okay, so that's the idea, that everything's covered. I'm sure there may be some things, and we'll add them if we find them. But we do this because we want to have an integrated, sustainable internal control system across all of our business, okay? So I already asked that. Can you think of anything that would not fall in these? And then I'd like to ask you this. Can you automate any of these things? Or any of these things that you could, I'm trying to get you to think about, pseudocode and things like that. Is there anything in here that you might be able to automate around strategy, around operations, around financial, or around regulatory compliance? Yes?
The tax component?
Tax? Give me an example. How would you monitor tax?
I guess because nowadays, like everyone's doing all these automated returns with all these different programs, it's just easier to. Sure. You don't need people doing hand-by-hand tax returns.
Sure. Absolutely. You monitor the inputs to the tax. You can monitor. You can, do the tax returns. How many here use TurboTax? Isn't that an amazing tool? Incredible. You can do TurboTax. That's an automation. Yes. What were you thinking?
I was thinking with pricing.
Yeah, absolutely. Making sure people are following the right processes in all of these. I can, anything I can write pseudocode for or an analytic, I can automate. And you know, I mean, I'd like to turn the question around and say, what on here couldn't you know, take my area, risk and internal control. One of the things we got to start doing is doing risk assessments with data and analytics instead of just sitting in a room with a bunch of top executives and saying, what do you think the risks are in the company? Okay? What if I have analytics that can say, you know, what are my financial risks? Well, I monitor now, you know, my accounts receivable, my current assets, my ratios. One of the people in the other class was talking about what they're going to do for their project, and one idea would be to do balance sheet or income statement monitoring with analytics. You know, and I'm gonna monitor the current ratio on a regular basis, and I'm gonna see if there's a change in that, and I'm gonna send a closed loop alert if there is. I'm gonna monitor receivables over 30 days old. You got
It would be hard to monitor the tone at the top and culture.
tone at the
What
top
can
and
you put in automation?
yeah. What do you think? Is that hard to monitor tone at the top?
Like, well, into automation.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
I think a lot on the operations side is tough to automate. Like project management, could you automate?
Huge opportunity. You know.
Really?
Measure, sure. I have metrics for any project that we're going to achieve certain goals. He didn't talk about this, but in the aerospace industry, they used earned value management systems, EVMS, and I'm going to manage cost targets. And I'm going to send out early warning targets if our spend on, I don't know, auxiliary, you know, hydraulics for the F-35 go over this amount. I'm going to send an alert. Because that's stuff you don't see until you do formal budget review.
Oh yeah, from that, but I'm thinking more of like you face something like person. If you're trying to merge and talk, you gotta have your personality be there and talking with them.
Yeah.
So in that point, I agree, but I always feel like you're always gonna need that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the computer can't do the.
Yeah.
It can tell you the numbers and when you're reaching your target, but you can't sell it.
Yeah, the
You
human
can't sell-
human judgment part. I think you're right too that strategy and corporate. You know, there's. I mean, if I'm, as an example, M&A. Okay, should Siemens buy Bombardier in Air Canada or the Bombardier train division in Canada? We're not doing that, but that's a competitor. But let's say we're deciding whether we buy them or not. Well, I can't put an analytic in that's going to tell me whether I should buy them or not. But what I could do is in the due diligence, and we're looking at doing this, starting to do M&A due diligence with analytics and taking the data out of a company that we're looking that's a prospect and running it through a control review and a financial analytics review to see if it's a good deal. And we may go to the company and say, you know what, we were thinking of giving you $400 million for this company, but because of the disaster and the risk that we have in your internal controls based on this analysis that we ran in 5 minutes because we had the data, we're going to only give you $350 million because we have a risk there and we have to take it on. Yeah, Justin?
Is that common in those types of M&A acquisitions where you would have access to the types of data that?
Yeah, well, that's assuming under the pre-deal that you would have access to the data. You might not have access to the data, but you know that could be a huge negotiation thing. But I think that's a great point because it's interesting you say that about projects too. Because we're putting analytics in on projects because we got a problem with projects. We're having earnings warnings about projects because you know we're struggling with doing projects. So we're going to use analytics to monitor early warning that something isn't going right in a project. And it could be as simple as, are there unapproved POs, you know, being made to the project, or are there transfers of costs between projects, you know, and all that we can write analytics for. And so we're actually looking at that. But that's good. And I want to be clear, I'm not talking about, you know, a panacea here because, you know, you can't automate everything. And I'll never say that. You know, we need judgment. But we're not doing any automation. We're sitting there and saying, yeah, I think that Justin's doing a pretty good job in that project. I think we're on track, and you know, it should be okay. You know, but projects are key, and strategies once they're put in, they have some metrics to them. You know, there's some way to measure it, and you don't want to find out at the end of a quarter that you're way off in your strategy. What if you could find out as soon as things started going awry because you had some type of continuous monitoring? So I turn the question around. What is it on here maybe that you couldn't automate? And I'd say, and again, none of it you can automate completely, but I think clearly there's an opportunity in any of these things, you know, to automate. how is our health costs trending? What is our safety record? Do we have any facilities around the world that have more than 5 accidents in a month? Or the spend on medical is at a certain point? How many complaints have we had about, I don't know, some issue that needs media attention? Now, it all has to be thought through and it has to make sense. But if you have an enterprise tool, just think back to what you've been doing with IDEA and ACL. As long as I have data, I can write nested analytics and say, if I see this happen, then do this. And I think what Jeff shared is really important, that you can also go to outside sources. You can look at competitive data, for example. It's all public domain data. I can know if I want to compare Siemens to GE on, I don't know, cost of goods sold or whatever. I can measure that and monitor that on a regular basis. Now, a lot of that's only published on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, so it's not available. But there is data available about these companies on a real-time basis, and we can monitor that and get a little deeper. Okay? Are you tracking okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So let's talk about identify some. Okay, we talked about automated controls there. Okay, so what we did then, so we got this new approach, this sort of COSO approach, and then we said, okay, now we're going to have a policy control master book. This is the Bible of controls. Okay. Now at Siemens, this is a group of controls of about 700 controls that every organization has to have in place. Okay. And they're around those 4 areas that I showed you. Now, some of them apply to every company, some don't, but they are the standard controls that everyone has to have in place. Again, back to why we got this corruption fine. We didn't have an integrated, sustainable internal control system. Okay? Then we have a process that all of those controls are regularly assessed on a regular basis. Okay? And then we get to this in-control statement. I think I shared this before, but if you can standardize processes, the Home Depot has 250 controls. We have 27,000 controls because we have financial services business, discrete manufacturing businesses, project management businesses, consulting businesses, in all different areas. So we're going to be more complex. We'll never have 250, but we could certainly still harmonize, and we're doing that. And we're using the control environment to drive more common processes. Okay? And remember, common processes make it simpler and to monitor controls. And I think one important thing we did too is before we started automating, or a little bit at the same time, we started saying, how do we simplify and organize our internal control system? And that's a good idea. You don't want to just charge out and automate your inefficient process. Okay? You want to try and improve the processes. But often the automation is a motivator for actually improving the processes. Okay? All right, so this is just to show you how detailed we do this. This is a copy of my plan from, I think it's last year or the year before. And what I do is I have this PCMB, this Bible of controls. In addition to that, we have specific things we have to do for Sarbanes-Oxley. We have 302 reporting requirements for Sarbanes-Oxley, and then we have enterprise risk management. That's, in our view, the whole internal control process. And so this little blue line is, the current date, and we move this across. And we have to do, right now we're doing what's called our initial testing. So we've tested all 700 of those controls in 60 companies across North America. And we've rated them and have results for them. And a guy like me sitting in China has done the same thing, okay, with the same control. So we're all doing the same thing, okay? And we're all working toward that glorious day sometime in October when we're going to sign this in-control statement and everybody's happy. Okay. Remember what I told you earlier, we still got to get more automation because we're not getting at the fraud stuff because we don't have that perception of monitoring. But so this is actually the plan I do with my staff every Monday morning. All right, Sarbanes-Oxley. Just so I know, you guys, Sarbanes-Oxley is part of what you study, right? In your classes, you have signed in 2002. It was a result of the smartest guys in the room, the Enron WorldCom thing, right? You know what it is. It's focused on what? Financial reporting. Okay, we're not dealing with operational, strategic, any of this stuff. And as I shared in the last class or the other class, the first class, it's getting a lot of attention from the PCOB now because they're not happy with what's still happening. And we had these, I showed you the report from Ernst & Young, disaster, worst audit report I ever saw, that kind of stuff. So, we're getting huge pressure to really change and improve that. So So let's look at the approach to Sarbanes, Oxley, and if you guys all know this already, I'm going to actually show you in our system where we do this with the tool. So we start out, we use what's called a top-down approach. So we start out with what are the significant accounts in my business based on dollar value or flow of money through, or just risk accounts. Okay, and then what are the, and we do it across some business strategy. So if we have a sales office in, Bangkok somewhere that's very small, we might just take a sampling and not do every office everywhere, because we have to sample again, another opportunity for analytics. Then we take and say, what are the processes that impact accounts payable, accounts receivable, or whatever, okay? And we identify the key processes. And then we identify the key systems that support those processes, SAP, Oracle, your spreadsheet that you do provisions with, or whatever, tax. And then we look at what are the key controls that we need to be in place to assure there's control in that process, okay? And it's really important that you focus, as I said, on key controls, okay? And then we test those controls, we identify deficiencies, and we report the deficiencies as part of the SO, and your external auditors check that. Now, what's a limitation of this top-down approach? It's a risk-based approach under AS5, right? But what's the limitation of it? I'm taking every account over, I don't know, $15 million, but the smaller accounts I'm not going to take. What's a problem with that? Anybody? Is it solid? What could go wrong? Or what might we miss?
What is the time spent from the start to the final evaluation?
Are you asking that, or you're saying the time is a problem? The time could be a problem. Latency.
Depends on the latency, the time could be a problem.
Yeah. You mean because I might test something in April, and then something goes wrong later, and I don't. Now we do what we call roll forward testing, but that's not always that. Sometimes that's just a statement that nothing's changed. Latency, we call it latency. That's one issue. What's another one?
Isn't that like if it's not material amount, very low, say like the materiality level is 50,000, but you have a series of $10,000 transactions.
Yeah, small transactions that are
aggregate small
right. And think about that. Things like T&E, a lot of that is fraud, but it's not going to show up on the account there. The overall payments account might show up, but we're not going to. We do a top-down approach, and you're siphoning money off a little bit at a time. You're probably not going to get this right. Not going to get audited or get reviewed. So a top-down approach is a risk-based approach that's going to find the big dollar things, but it's not going to find all the smaller things. So what do you think people who are perpetrating or concealing fraud are going to do? They're going to say, "Oh, I'm going to work on the small things. I'm not going to try and do earnings management. I'm going to do something smaller." Okay. So I'm not saying it's a bad approach, but again, if you can add to that some automation, and you can still use the risk-based or top-down approach, but you add automation, and maybe you can do the whole population just as easily. Okay. So I'm saying that here. Consider the thresholds and the opportunity, and what you brought up is good. The latency too. That I may do this in the beginning of the year, and there might be $100 in the account, and then 6 months later, because of some big transaction in an M&A account, there's $20 million now, and I didn't pick that account as a significant account because of the timing, the latency of it. Okay, and automation, of course, could have proved that because we could do the whole population. Okay, then we have IT controls. Okay, and this is important because it's also the systems that you pick. Okay. So I have key significant accounts, I have significant processes, and I have what? Computer systems that support that. And when we look at computer systems, we look at IT controls at the company level. Those are the tone at the top, the governance, the priority of security and other things. Then we have IT general controls, which are change management, computer operations, security and access controls, and the security of the data center. And then we have IT application controls. Do you guys know the difference here? Is this stuff you've heard before? Okay. This was in your first account. Did you read your chapters? Okay, so IT application controls, those are automated controls, such as the three-way match that's done in SAP, or the duplicate invoice check in SAP, which will not allow you to have a duplicate invoice. It'll kick that out for you. If that's on, that's a great control. And the deal we have with E&Y at Siemens is if the IT general controls are solid, and these ones are, by the way, a little harder to automate. These are already automated, and we're trying to use a lot more. We need to use more. If the IT general controls are solid, then we do not have to test the IT application controls except every 3 years with our program. And that's called benchmarking. And the idea there is this, that if you could, think about this, if you couldn't change anything in the system, there was 4 eyes controls on anything that's changed. If nobody, there's proper segregation of duties and no one can access the system without authority and proper approval. If the data center is locked down and no one can break into the data center and mess with the database layer, and when something's developed, it has to be approved and proper changes made and transport's done, then theoretically no one could change the duplicate invoice thing. No one could turn it off, or no one could go in and write their own code or anything. So that's why it's like that. Okay, and when you have an ACL system or an SAP GRC system, you got to make sure that these IT general controls are really solid, because otherwise all the rest of your control environment is invalid. Because if I can go in and screw around with your system, it doesn't matter what controls you have. Because I shared the story with you, and I used to be an SAP consultant. If you have, in the FI area, if you have super user access to SAP, you can go in today to any SAP system, and you can write a little ABOP routine that says turn off the security logs between 2 and 3:30 at night, and when the batch processing is done for AR, AP, etc., I want you to take the cents off of every transaction, and I want you to transfer it to my account and e-transfer it to Geneva, Switzerland, to a bank account, and then erase everything you did and reinstate the logs, and then set up to do it again tomorrow night. And you'll never find it. You know, I don't care how much auditing you do, you won't find it, because they have complete power. So if you got to make sure you have controls in place to stop someone from doing that. And then we have manual dependent controls. That's where I produce a fancy report from IT, and it gives me a listing of what someone did during that month, and I read that report, and then I make a judgment about a deficiency or not. That's a manual IT report. Okay? But this is the area where we're really emphasizing, and your ACL or your systems, you got to make sure these things are in place. Okay? And I told you some of the war stories that happened to us where, we had thought we had everything locked down, but the back door was wide open to get into the SAP system, so there wasn't security, computer IT security. There wasn't security, so people could go in and change their paycheck in the database. And so we had all these controls, and that invalidates your whole control system related to IT. So IT has a little special treatment under Sarbanes Oxley, and it's based on the arrangements you have. But what we're doing, and we're getting pressure to do, is let's use more of these. Let's make sure these are solid, so these are solid, and let's use more of these. So we're, I think Jason Gross spoke to you guys, and what he's done is set up a system that has hundreds of these in our financial services group. And that's what Jeff's doing. He's adding these kind of controls into monitor, as opposed to the manual approach. Okay, so, and how do ITACs provide a better level of control precision? Well, what do you got here? This is a continuous control. When I turn on the duplicate invoice check in SAP, that is on permanently. Anybody puts anything in, it's going to catch it. Okay? If I have the 3-way match, it's going to native code in SAP. It's going to work the same way every time, and it's monitoring every transaction that goes through that. There's no way around it. There's no sampling. It's just a continuous process. So that's why they have a better control precision. Yes.
In governmental accounting, do they use a lot of IT monitoring? Because it sounds like they could really use some of these systems, right?
Yeah.
Like they send alerts when they do their budgeting, and then the actual, or even with a lot of welfare and Medicare, Medicaid, scanning the system. Wouldn't that be wouldn't IT be very beneficial for them?
Yeah. Well, I know.
Has the government been
Yeah.
targeted
Yeah.
market to kind of tap into.
In fact, when you go to, I spoke at a lot of IAA conferences and fraud conferences. When you go to them, you see a lot of, looking for a marker, but you see a lot of interaction from government. Government is very involved in this, and the IRS is very involved. You know, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. You know, there's a lot of involvement from government, and I think they're probably in some areas leading the way here. The Justice Department and the feds are doing a good job. They're like us though. They're stuck like you guys are. And us that they're trying to figure out how to do this, and there is a lot of resistance to it because people don't want to be monitored. You know, so I mean, you saw what happened with the thing with the IRS lately about monitoring organizations. You know? Another interesting thing that the government does is they use this concept. I asked them about this over lunch. EVMS. Okay, and what that does is. What? What does it stand for?
Every man for himself.
Every man for himself. Yeah. That's good. So you have a, you know.
Keep it up, thanks.
What EVMS does is this: it takes and you have a budgeted line, right? And this is an area where automation is being used a lot in the government. And what you do then is you have your this is I guess time, and this is cost, okay? And so this is January through December, okay? And this is dollars. So what you do is then you have your actual cost line, okay? That goes up like this, okay? And so what we do traditionally in measuring projects, for example, and this is what you were asking earlier about projects, is we say, okay, you know, it's we don't even care about the date, but we say, you know, at this point, you know, we're spending, you know, maybe we're out here, so we're spending maybe less than the budget, all right? But we haven't gotten the project done. Right? So we just compare against the project. So what happens is people fall behind in the project, and they don't do things and spend money, and they get patted on the back. Hey, Justin, you're doing a great job, man. You haven't spent more than the budget. You're way ahead of budget. This is super. And then we get to the end of the project, and this is the spend, okay. And then I have the schedule, okay, and the actual schedule, and I'm out here somewhere, okay. I mean, I should be done with this project, but I'm not even close, and I've already spent way too much money, okay? And what happens in traditional project accounting is we're patting ourselves in the back until the project comes due here in, I don't know, September. And, you know, and all of a sudden it's not done, and everyone panics and we try and do something. What EVMS does is it makes you set up what are called time-phased work breakdown structures, okay? And they're here like this. And you've heard of that before, huh?
Well, it's like micromanaging, right? Your time, right?
No, that's a negative thing. So a work breakdown structure is, in order to build this airplane, okay, we have these 3 or 4 packages. This is the F-35, okay? And this package has to be done by March, okay? And this package is $10 million to do. This package starts in mid-February, and it has to be done by March, April, May, okay? And this is $50 million, okay? And the way your value management works is it monitors yourself against your budget, how much you spend, but also against schedule. So if I'm supposed to be right here, but I'm only here in the project on my schedule, then I'm behind by $50 million. And that gets everyone's attention. And it forces you to establish a baseline to say, this project is going to be done in these work packages that have to be done by this date, because there's contract penalties now with vendors and stuff. You pay out the nose. And so what it does is it forces you to know early on if there's anything wrong, not just with the budget, but with the schedule. So it dollarizes schedule. So it forces you to baseline your project very clearly. And this, by the way, is required by the Federal Acquisition Register for DoD projects over $20 million. And if you're doing a DoD project over $50 million, you have to have this ANSI certified. But it's a fantastic. It's the way they build the F-35, the B-2 bombers, all these things. And if we did more of this in other places, other companies, that are not DoD, it puts a motion on achieving schedule as well as budget. Because if you miss by 1 day this, you are now $50 million behind the project. And guess what happens? That gets attention, even though you haven't spent a dime because you didn't finish this thing on time. The schedule, 75% of IT projects are over budget and over cost significantly. Happens all the time because we're not managing projects right. And then you can apply analytics to the variation against budget and the variation against schedule, and you can report that on a real-time basis with this same closed-loop alerting system. That's a little aside note part of this, but that's just an interesting thing about projects. But I want to have you get the vision that we can monitor anything. We can monitor any of this stuff. Okay? So let's get back to what Siemens does here. I like the questions. Keep them coming. Challenge me, right? I know you guys are thinking this guy's high on this automation and controls, but I'm telling you, it's something we have to do, and you guys got to balance me. So what we do then is we say, when we find a deficiency, and a deficiency is not just in the financial area, okay, remember, it's any of these here. So for example, I can have a control to prevent media reputation. I can have a control that's going to prevent management from spending thousands of hours working on something that doesn't add value to the company. I can have a control that monitors business objective achievement or regulatory. So for example, I mentioned earlier this conflict minerals thing. What's the financial impact of conflict minerals? Well, I'll tell you this. If 12 people show up in front of Siemens' main office in Washington, D.C., in front of the media with these signs that say Siemens is abusing human rights because they're buying metals such as tin and gold and other things from the Congo, we could be out of business tomorrow because customers are going to say, I'm not buying from Siemens if they're violating human rights. That's why you watch the attention that these big companies are getting that are buying clothing from places in Asia where they abuse people's human rights. That you may say, well, that's that people won't work for that. That's their problem. No, it's not. It's your problem because you're going to have serious problems if you do that. And you participate in that. So it could be any of these. So what we say is on the financial part, if we have a priority 3 deficiency, it has a $10 million impact, or it results in an internal investigation, doesn't go outside, or there's no damage to image or brand in terms of reputation. If it's a priority 2, it's 10 to 12 million. If it's over a priority 1, that's 20 million, over 20 million. That's net income impact, okay? And there's certain rules for us. Like if you have a priority 1 deficiency at Siemens, you're going to get lots of attention and lots of help, and that's right up through the top of the company, doesn't matter where it is. And if you don't remediate it in the current year, it escalates up again to a material weakness potentially, or up a level. Okay? So we have a measurement system. Okay. So how did we come up with this system? What we did was we went through, and again, remember, we're not just talking financial, we're talking the whole thing, and we took all our corporate circulars, okay, which we had about 360 of those, plus another 800 in our sectors. We took SOA 404, our SOA data, we took our self-assessments, we took our internal control task force, we took our business conduct guidelines, and we came up and we synthesized all those from 1,500 or so down to about 900, and we broke them out into those 4 categories and said of all these rules and regulations, some of which were duplicative, we said, 17% are strategic, 44% are operational, financial 32%, which is high, it should be lower than that, and 7%. The industry average is about 15% financial, 7% compliance, okay? And then we said, okay, now let's get these all together from all these sources, and let's put them into this Bible called the Policy Control Masterbook. So in there are 700 or so, they've been whittled down from 1,500, 700 controls that every company has to look at for applicability. They're the same controls whether you're in Islip, New Jersey, or Newark, New Jersey here, or you're in Bangkok, or you're in Sao Paulo, or you're in Shanghai, okay? They're the same ones because they all fit those 4 areas, okay? And everyone has to look at them. But they don't all apply because some of them, so we do what we call the sort of salami slicing here, okay? And what we do is we start out with, let's say, 700 or so, and then we say, well, you know, 90 of those controls are the responsibility of a central group. They're not the responsibility of Siemens in the US here, because they're, I don't know, some tax or governance or corporate, you know, mandate that applies under German law to Siemens in Germany. Then we say some of them are not applicable to my IRE because I'm in a financial services business, so I don't have inventories and manufacturing controls and things like that. Some of them are conducted at a superior or other entity, such as a global shared service group or a central processing group. Some of them are controls that are fully outsourced to another unit. We do a lot of intercompany transferring. We make products for one another within 1,000 companies, so some of them are, you know, things that are transferred. And then we get down to some slice that applies to my particular company, right? And I'm going to show you this in the tool here in a minute. And then we say, the governance owner says, all right, now, based on the risk of that control, okay, we're going to have to test that control either with a detailed assessment DA, a self-assessment, or an NSAR, okay? And every control is labeled as one of those based on its risk, okay? And when we go through it, we find that on a risk basis, most of them are the NSAR. So of these, at this time there were 800. Now we have about 700. We've reduced it a little. You know, most of them are the DAs. I'm sorry, the NSARs. And the NSAR means no specific assessment required. Taking a picture. Code blue. Got it. Okay. So NSAR means I need to be able to articulate to an auditor if they come and ask me how I'm doing the control, but I don't have to document it. Okay. Let me show you that on the next slide here. An SA. Let's start with a DA. A DA is like a SOA control, and that means that I'm going to have someone independent come in and test that control. So if Justin works in the tax area, then we're going to have Jing from the controlling area or the M&A area come and test his control independently. Because we don't want, it's a high enough risk, we don't want to test it without independence, okay? And so a third-party person has to come in and we have to test the design of the control and we have to test the effectiveness of the control, right? Remember that from the first class? Okay. An SA is a self-assessment. That means I'm going to just write up what I do in my process and demonstrate with evidence that I have this control under control. So it's not as high a risk. And again, an NSAR is no specific assessment required. I'm just going to make sure that I can articulate to an auditor what I do. Okay? So every control has that in it. Right? And again, you can see, so just as an example, when I do an essay, let's start with that. What activities are performed? Remember with auditing, who, what, where, how, why. You know, how is it done? Who does it? What is the evidence? You know, what's the procedure that it's done? So here's an example of one that we might have. So we have, this is an actual one, 3.2.4.2.1. And by the way, I'll tell you, this numbering scheme even has a logic to it. A 3 means it's a financial control. The 2 means it's a, I don't know, customer-related control. So there's a requirement that a customer credit check is undertaken and customer credit limits are defined for all customers appropriately authorized and regularly reviewed. So this got a rating of achieved, and the person goes in and they describe the customer credit rating procedure. The procedure was reviewed and found to be comprehensive, and then they describe what they do. The accounts receivable AR team has responsibility for completing the customer credit checks. New customers can't be placed until there are established delegation limits of authority. The head of accounting does this. And then they have a link or a documentation here for the essay. Okay? So if I'm an auditor and I want to come in and audit this control for whole Siemens, I can go into this tool and I can see how everyone does it. Okay? For every company, thousands of companies or more, everyone does it, has that control in place. Okay? That's the essay. Right, that's the lower risk. The lowest risk one is the NSAR. You don't have to put anything in the tool for that. Okay. Then we have the. I'm going to take you in the tool here in a minute. Then we have the detailed assessment. Again, this applies to the Sarbanes Oxley. This is where you got to have a test of design, you got to have a test of effectiveness, you got to have an independent person come in and test the control. Okay, so just want to see this methodology. We're thinking this through. You got to make sure you have the key control and the key control is documented. And if you fail to have a good design or effectiveness, the control fails. And this is a small number of the controls, but it's the big issues. It's the accounts payable things, it's the fraud type things, it's the stuff that could affect financial reporting mostly and other strategic ones. Okay? And you're asking the same kind of questions. So, read through how is it achieved, understand the key controls. And I want to make this point that it's really important because one of the things we found with automation is when you put automation in, people see that as something additive to the control environment. In other words, that's great that you're doing that, so just throw that on top and we'll all sleep better at night. Where in reality, it's not adding any value. It's not adding value if you're also doing the manual things. And one of the problems we have is people aren't willing to give up the manual controls, even though they like a piece of paper, they like to see a signature, and by just dumping more controls on is not making the control environment better. In fact, it's probably confusing it. So that's an important point, and it's a challenge you're going to have when you come up with controls and people say, oh, that's really cool. Yeah, put that on too, and I'm still going to do my manual thing. And we got to get away from that because we got to recognize that if you really identify key controls, then you want to use automation to monitor the key controls, not to monitor a bunch of things around them. Because if you really identify the key control and you have continuous monitoring of the key control, that's all you need. And there's a big emphasis in our company of how do we reduce the number of controls, because the number of controls are causing cost, significant cost, and confusion, because we're doing too much work to get a good control instead of working on running our business. So simple, less is better as long as it's the right quality. So let's look at one of these, and I'm going to just give you a quick exercise to do just for a couple minutes here on this one. 23121, there's a requirement that the limits of authority, LOA we call it, process is executed for every customer project with a bid volume of over 100,000 euro and documented in a PM and Siemens LOA tool. Okay? The key control performer obtains a quarterly, this is what they do, they can obtain a quarterly SAP report which lists all projects in the LOA tool. A check is then performed to verify that all existing projects in SAP which are subject to the LOA process, including projects with bid volumes greater than 100,000 euro, have been appropriately approved as per the LOA requirements and documented in the tool. The key performer then stores a signed protocol form in his or her office as evidence. Okay, so we've gone through the key control. We've assumed for this example this process has been completed, and that's the control requirement. This is the control activity, okay? And what I'd like you guys, and then this is what they're doing. For every customer project, they go through and define what they're doing, okay? So, and then someone's third party is going to come in and re-perform that and review it to make sure it's right, okay? So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to just take 5 minutes or so here, and I'm going to get you out of here early. Promise. I'd like to take 5 minutes, and I'd like you to tell me how we could automate that control. I don't even need 5 minutes, but just talk about it for a minute, okay? Just let's take take a break too for just 5 minutes. We'll come back here and just let's reassemble. I'd like you to tell me how for this control. Let me go back to this screen. I'll leave this up here. Tell me how you would automate that control. Just give me a description. You can write it out, raise your hand, and tell me. But let's just take 5 minutes, take a little break here. Okay?
My name's Carol. What does SAP stand for?
SAP is an enterprise risk. It's an ERP system, and it's the it's SAP. It has a systems, applications, and processes. I think is what it stands for, but I think it's actually a German name. It's a German name, yeah. SAP, you should, I'll tell you a little hint. I got a huge boosted salary because I knew SAP. I learned SAP when I worked for Armstrong. And I encourage you to learn either Oracle or SAP. And there are no experts in SAP, but it's an amazing tool. And it's used by 60% of the large companies, of Fortune 5 companies in the US and across the world. And it's a great tool. And if you know it, you're invaluable, and it'll help you with your auditing and with what we're doing here. And again, there's nobody's that great at it because there's so many aspects of it. Like when you have a team of people that come in and do SAP, someone will come in and say, I am a FI, HR, hourly payroll expert. That's their focus. And we bring these teams in to do migrations. Everyone has their specific focus. So just understanding and yet doing configuration, setting up SAP up is not hard. I could show you on a system. It's a configurator and has radial buttons. And you say, do you want to turn on duplicate invoice check? Yeah, turn that on. Do you want payables? Do you want derivative accounting features? Do you want reconciliation of features turned on? Yeah, you press these radial buttons. But the problem is people don't really understand the processes or the overhead that entails. So they start clicking buttons, and then they have a system they don't understand. So it's not so much knowing all the technical things, it's just understanding that SAP, it does everything. It does project accounting, discrete accounting, derivatives, purchase to pay, order to cash, all your business processes, guarantees, IFRS accounting, US GAAP accounting, divestitures, carve-outs. It can do all of that. But you don't have to be an expert on all of that. Just learn it and be able to teach people how to use it and learn the basics of it. It's a great, and Rutgers here has a continuous auditing laboratory where we have that software here. Dr. Kogan and some of the others that use it. You're welcome, I think, to use the lab if you want to just learn SAP. You can go and get Carol certified if you want, in one module and take a course at SAP. It's like $3,000 to take the course, but your company will probably pay for it if you go to work for one of the big four or a large company. Just ask them, I'd like to get SAP. If your shop is SAP, just a great thing to do. That and some of the other things we talked about will help you. Okay, so we'll just, at 5 o'clock. What happened? Was there a power outage last night?
Oh.
Yeah. Boy, down the shore, it was like thunder and lightning. It was incredible. So the question is, how would you automate this control? I don't mean what tool would you use. I mean, just what would be your logic that you would use maybe to automate this? What would you do? What would be the pseudocode or something? Any other questions? You can talk to one another in your groups. Collaborate, or as one big group.
Is this an assignment?
No.
Oh.
Is this
Well, wouldn't it be similar to like a credit check?
Yeah.
Like yes, no. Like, so a customer bid, you're saying like the project comes in, like you have sales, a sale.
Yeah. No. Yeah. There's a requirement that a customer project, any project, what it's saying is
So
simply.
you have to check that. Wouldn't you check like an invoice, like
A what?
AR or AP? No,
Yeah.
no, AR, right?
Yeah. There's a requirement. No. Wait.
So if it's greater than 100,000, then you have to.
Yeah.
Right?
That it has the proper approved level of authority, right?
Right.
So all we're saying is any project. Go ahead.
If greater than 100,000.
Yeah.
Run the report.
Run a report.
Verify. Obviously, you have to check. Document.
What are you gonna do with the
You're
report?
gonna document it. No, you're not gonna do anything with the report. If it's greater than 100,000, then send it to the report, or like enter it into your document.
Yeah. Well, that's one piece of it. Okay.
Alright, well, that's where you're gonna start.
Well, that's a good start.
We're gonna start. Just brainstorming here.
Come on, anyone else? You want to talk about it, or you guys ready? You guys are burned, huh?
This marketing class is
It's killing.
a nightmare. Like my brain hurts after like 1 hour of it. But I'll start with if greater than 100,000.
All right, that's a good start.
Document. Then
Give her a hand. Come on, that was good. Okay. If project value, right? This is a pseudocode. Is greater than 100,000 euro. Okay. Then. Or
send to
No, you have to then see if the LOA has been completed.
Ah, okay, so what's the next step?
Then verify completion of the LOA process.
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
Then verified signature or electronic approval, right? Verify the signature on the, or approval, verify signature / approval on the LOA list, okay? So I'm going to have somewhere this little document that says, you know, if you know, anything over 100,000, or here I'm going to have approver list, okay? And I'm going to have Klaus Stegemann, my boss, okay? And he's anything greater than 100K, okay? And Karen Alyaron is anything greater than 50K. And Justin is anything greater than $5. That's my level of $5. So what I'm going to do is say, if project value greater than 100,000, then go out and match to this table and pick up Klaus Stegemann on LOA list and confirm electronic approval or signature, okay? Signature, electron or approval, okay? Right? So this is pseudocode. This is all this is. This is, we write this in ACL right now. So if the project value is over 100K, then check the LOA table. So if we were doing it in ACL, we would bring in the LOA table, and we bring in this is the project budget or spend list, okay? And we have projects that are 100,000, we have some that are 50,000, we have some that are $5. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to pull out from these projects up to here, and I'm going to match them against the approval list here. Okay, and now, and if that happens, if no signature, forgive my writing, you guys, then
Then meeting. If no signature, then hold a meeting. You're gonna have to talk to them.
No, I'm gonna, if no signature, then send. We should do this. This could even be one of your projects where you just write pseudocode for situations, you know, and then because we can automate the pseudocode. Then send alert to Jing in audit, and this is closed loop. So every time we have one of these, Jing's going to get a notice in her box. It's going to be in the system with a red light, and it ain't going away until that signature is approved or there's some action taken to deal with it. Okay. Right? Yeah. So this, you know, and we're only dealing with two tables here. Now, what if I had to convert currency or something? Okay, if I had a situation where I had to check that the currency rate was right, or that, you know, it was a C-level executive. So now I have these tables, and this is what C-level execs. Okay, out on the web, I've got, you know, currency rates tables. I got competitor information. Okay, so that's when you're thinking back on those things. I got all this stuff. You know, I have the C-level executives in here, so I can see if they made journal entries or they approved things. Now, you got to make sure that these tables are available either internally or externally, but you set them up once and then you're done. And you got to make sure they're maintained and they're right, and you got to make sure that they're secure. Because if I could go in and say that, June is able to approve $100,000 and change it, then that's not going to work. Okay. But if Klaus Stegemann has to approve them, and that's the only one, and no one can, IT general controls, no one can get in and change that table, then I'm secure. Okay? So we're just, this isn't rocket science. This is just, you know, and I'd say you're right. Sometimes it's an IT. Sometimes it is produce a report because we got to kind of go through and say, you know, but like we do with segregation of duties and things like that, you know, we go through and we have a list of current employees. And we have a list of what their roles are. and then we run an analytic that just says go in and make sure that no one has any of these conflicts, and that everybody on this list is a current employee in good standing, and no one has a garnishment on their wage, or no one has, you can, all this is all available. This is all data that's in every company's systems, and in many cases it's all, this can all be in one system. Well, this is the web, but this can all be in one SAP system, because you can go in and set up any tables you want. And that was the concept that we used in the development of some of these systems. We set up tables that said who are the authorized people, what are their levels of authority, and you see the complexity if you don't have common processes. Now you got to have one of these tables for every different company, and you got to maintain one for every company. But if I have one list and there's a good change management on that, then if Klaus retires and Nina takes his place, then we just put her name in here. And now we're updated. Now I don't have to do anything with this. I don't even have to test this control, because now it's automatic. All I got to do is make sure that the system that's doing this is accredited. And this is the argument we've had with E&Y. They're coming in and saying, you have these kind of controls in place, which Jason shared with you that he does. And they come in and say, okay, we'd like you to take a test of 5 or a test of 30 or a test of 1. And we're like, why would we do that? We have the whole population. And we have a record of every you can keep a log of every one that was monitored. So why would I go in and test 5 when I've tested the whole population? It's part of the thinking change we got to have. Now, what I might want to do is make sure that during the exposure period, this control was in place. And this control was in place the whole time during the exposure period. Otherwise, someone could have turned it off. And that's where, again, these IT general controls that we talk about come in. Okay? All right, does that make sense? So if we go back to those other things, there's nothing in there that I can't write some kind of pseudocode. If project greater than this, the data's there. If the signature. Now, where we do run into problems is we don't have workflow for everything, Like the signature process may have been a manual piece of paper that we signed. But, workflow is easy to automate. And SAP comes with systems for workflow. Microsoft has workflow tools. So you can go to electronic signatures. They're just as good. I hate when I personally get banks and stuff that say, oh, no, you got to come in and sign the paper. I mean, what's the difference if I'm signing it electronically or come in and sign it for you? Okay? You guys are smarter than the other class. Don't tell them I said that. Okay? So this is the DA.